Hello again. So we're going to continue our look at ActionScript and with object-oriented programming, and extend what we did in the last episode. What we did before is we created a class for our button here called GameButton. And inside of it we created, let me go ahead and open up the class so you can see it. So inside of the class we created our stop statement so it wasn't oscillating between our first and two frames. And then we created a specific name for the label for the button. But the problem is every single time that you created a multiple copy of this, every button said click. And you don't necessarily want that to happen all the time. So we can create something called a method. And a method is what you call a function inside of a class. That method that we create, we can then pass information to, which can then internally change the label of the button. So let's go ahead and remove this line here on line 12, since we're not going to be changing them all to say click. So let's go ahead and remove that. And we're going to create a new method inside of this particular object. So we haven't really talked too much about the alternatives to using the phrase public. So we'll just use public for now. So we're going to make this a public function. And we're going to give the function a name, just like any other function you would in ActionScript. So we'll call this setLabel. And setLabel is going to need some sort of parameter, so it has text that we can then put into the button label. So we're going to create a variable inside of the function called newLabel. And this is going to be a string, since that's what is used for a text field. And this method has no return type, so we're just going to use void. All right, so we're going to take that parameter that's coming in that we're temporarily calling newLabel, and then we're going to assign it to the text attribute of the class's button label text field. So we're going to say this button label text equals new label. So we save this and go back out to our project. If I run this, you'll see that nothing changes. That's because we haven't sent anything to this particular instance for it to change its label. But just like any other object that we create inside of ActionScript, we have to give all of our instances an instance name. So I'm going to select our instance here, and I'm going to call this my roll button. So now we have a name for this particular object on our stage. Now, if you remember, we created something called the document class. And the document class is what allows us to code everything that's going to happen inside of our project. So I'm going to reopen that class up. And now inside of this, I'm then going to be saying, OK, roll button, I want you to execute your method called setLabel. I'm going to pass it a parameter, let's just say roll. So we're going to do this inside of the constructor, since this is something that we want to happen when the project is created. So let's go ahead and put in roll button. And then we're going to create we're going to access our function here. So roll button.setLabel. And we're going to pass it a parameter called roll. Let's go ahead and save this and see what happens. There. So let's just review exactly what happened here. So we have our document class. That's associated with our FLA, our project. Okay? So whenever that's run, it executes its constructor. In this case, on line 9, it's the public function diceOut. DiceOut then accesses the instance roll button. And roll button is that other class we made called rollButton.as. It's going to execute its setLabel method. And it's going to pass it a parameter called roll. So inside of that particular class, it's going to get a request to execute its method setLabel. It's expecting a string, which it temporarily calls newLabel inside of our method here. So then inside the class, going to access its button label object, in this case a text field, and assign something to its text property. In this case, the string that was brought in that we are calling newLabel. And then it gets back and then it finishes the program. That's, in essence, how this works. So we were creating these document classes and other classes that will then start communicating with each other to get all the different behaviors and actions that you want. So what we can also do is create an additional copy of this. So let's go ahead and drag out another game button. Let's just call this Try Again button. And I can go into our document class here and say Try Again button, set label Try Again. Same class, same method, but now we're passing it a different parameter on a unique instance. And now you see that they both are uniquely defined. But they all have the same internal behavior. All this different logic and other things that we will eventually put into the class will now be shared and will be part of each instance. So what we're going to do in the next episode is start connecting some of these things together. We're going to start by first creating event handlers that we can then place onto each one of our instances to then derive exactly how the behavior is going to work inside of the class.